Have you ever, noticed how incredibly satisfying it is to just sketch out a plan for a new life?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you sit at a coffee shop with a notebook, and you just draw up a rough blueprint for a house you want to build. You sketch the massive windows, the wraparound porch.
Maybe you look garden out back.
Exactly. And in that moment, it takes zero effort. Right?
Copy.
It is flawless. You can practically smell the pine trees. It feels totally real, but it's completely safe because a paper roof never leaks.
Right. And a paper foundation never cracks. But the second you put the pen down and decide to actually build that house, well, the fantasy just shatters. Suddenly you're dealing with, zoning permits and supply chain delays.
And pouring concrete in the freezing rain.
Yes. The physical world demands friction.
Friction, patience, and probably a whole lot of splinters. And that tension between the frictionless, intoxicating fantasy and the gritty, unglamorous work of actually building something real, that is exactly what we are plunging into today. Welcome back to another deep dive. Today is June 24, 2026, and we are prepping for tomorrow by looking at a truly wild stack of sources.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating mix today.
It really is. We have an astrological forecast for June 25, 2026, and an accompanying piece of writing by the same author, Tarot by Heike C. But it is not just an essay. It is a sweeping, super complex sci-fi fable called The Bridge of a Thousand Promises.
It is a brilliant pairing. We're essentially looking at a psychological diagnostic tool on one hand and a narrative laboratory on the other, designed to test those exact psychologies.
Right. And we're doing this deep dive specifically for you, the listener, because the themes in these sources cut right to the core of how we live today, how we navigate our relationships, how we interact with technology, and honestly, how we process grief. So, okay, let's unpack this. Our sources lay out two opposing astrological energies for June 25.
The big cosmic tug of war.
Exactly. The first is called Venus trine Saturn. The text describes this as an energy geared toward long-term relationship commitments, maturity, and structural integrity. It asks the ultimate grounding question: does this have substance?
What's fascinating here is, to understand why it asks that, we have to look at the actual mechanics of a trine.
Okay, break that down for us.
So in astrology, a trine happens when planets are about 120 degrees apart. It is a harmonious angle. The energy flows effortlessly, kind of like having a tailwind. Saturn is the planet of discipline, time, boundaries, and Venus governs what we value. So our relationships, art, resources.
Right.
So when they operate harmoniously, your focus naturally shifts from what feels good right now to what can actually endure.
It is the architectural energy. It cares about the concrete foundation. But then, operating at the exact same time, we have this opposing transit, right? Sun square Neptune. And the source text describes this as heightened sensitivity, nostalgia, boundary dissolution, and profound projection.
It is a totally different vibe.
Totally. It is the overwhelming urge to believe in a beautiful illusion simply because the alternative feels too painful.
And this happens because of the square. A square is a 90-degree angle. It creates friction. Imagine two cars arriving at an intersection at the exact same time from different directions.
Oh, man.
Right? They are at cross purposes. Someone has to hit the brakes or there's a collision. The sun represents the ego, the core self, the physical reality, while Neptune represents the vast ocean, the collective unconscious, dreams, illusions.
So they are basically fighting each other.
Exactly. Neptune wants to dissolve the very boundaries that Saturn is trying so hard to build. So the source text issues a very specific warning here. While compassion is highly activated right now, if you lose your boundaries, that selflessness will quickly slip into martyrdom.
Wow. Okay, so if Venus trine Saturn is doing the hard work of, say, cooking a nutritious, complex meal from scratch because it knows it will sustain you long term.
Sun square Neptune is eating a giant bag of cotton candy just because you are sad.
Oh my gosh, yes. Or, actually, it is like drinking salt water when you were stranded at sea.
No, that is a much more accurate way to look at it.
Right, because if you are dying of thirst on a raft, drinking salt water probably feels like absolute salvation for about 5 seconds. It goes down like water. It gives you the illusion of relief.
Yeah.
But the actual mechanism of the salt water is dehydrating your organs faster. It accelerates the delusion.
It actively harms you while masquerading as nourishment. And I think it is really worth asking you, listening to this right now, where in your own life might you be drinking the salt water?
Oof, that is a good question.
Right. Where are you choosing the illusion of relief, like a fantasy, a projection, an unearned escape over the slow, sustained effort of building something real?
It is a heavy question. And the author clearly knew you couldn't just drop a psychological bombshell like that and walk away. They needed to show us what it looks like when those two energies actually collide. So they built a world to test it. Let's talk about the planet Aurelian.
Aurelian is just a masterclass in world building. It is a planet where the sky itself is woven from living memory.
Yeah, the entire civilization runs on this core technology called the weave. It is an atmospheric living system that connects minds, archives history, and transmits emotions across the globe. It literally flows through the sky like silver auroras. Everyone shares their memories and their feelings constantly.
Which sounds beautiful at first.
Right. The text notes that empathy flows so freely that individual boundaries blur and compassion becomes currency.
Which is the absolute peak manifestation of that Sun Square Neptune energy we were just talking about. It is an entire planet that has dissolved its boundaries into a collective ocean of feeling.
But wait, I'm getting stuck on something here. If an entire society has an endless, frictionless well of empathy if I can instantly feel your joy and you can instantly feel my pain, shouldn't that be a utopia? We would have no wars, we would have no cruelty. Why is the author framing this amplified compassion as a threat?
It is a completely logical assumption to make, but it ignores the shadow side of uncontained emotion. Empathy is vital, obviously, but the source text explicitly warns that in Aurelian, longing became a force capable of shaping reality itself.
Capable of shaping reality.
Wow. Think about the mechanics of that. If you have zero boundaries, you lose the ability to discern. You absorb the grief, the fear, and the unfulfilled desires of millions of people as if they were your own. The danger isn't the capacity to feel. The danger is that people forget the difference between what is actually real and what merely feels intensely true in the moment.
Ah, I get it. Because the feeling becomes so loud it overrides the facts.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the city of Calem, floating above the planet on crystalline engines. At the center of this city is the Hall of Accord. This is where every treaty, every inheritance, and every marriage on the planet is finalized. And this is where we meet our main character, Ilian Voss. He is the architect of bonds.
Ilian is the walking embodiment of our other astrological energy, Venus trine Saturn. His entire job is to ensure that agreements have actual substance. He is not looking for passion. He is looking for structural integrity.
There's this incredible scene that shows exactly how his mind works. He is interviewing a young couple who want a union contract. And the couple is utilizing the weave to project these breathtaking, translucent holographic memories right into the room.
Oh, it's such a striking visual.
It really is. They're showing Alien their sun-drenched first dates, perfect holidays, tearful declarations of love. It is an overwhelming, amplified sensory experience of romance.
They are presenting the performance of love, the paper blueprint of the house from your analogy earlier.
Yes, and Alien just reaches out and turns the display off. The holograms vanish. The room just goes dark. He strips away all the emotional metadata, looks at them, and says, "Tell me about the hardest year you've spent together."
I loved that line.
The couple is stunned. They ask why that matters when they clearly love each other so much. And Alien replies, because difficulty reveals structure.
That is pure Saturn energy. He proceeds to make them talk for 3 hours about their arguments, their illnesses, their moments of financial panic. He doesn't approve their union because they are madly in love. He approves it because they have demonstrated the actual mechanics of endurance.
Right. They know how to remain in the room when the feeling of love evaporates and the work of love begins.
But the work of love is hard, and frankly, people get tired of it, which triggers the central crisis of the story. Reports start coming in from the coast. A shining city has mysteriously appeared in the mist at the Sea of Mirrors.
And this city is uniquely dangerous, right? Because it is a paradise tailored to collective grief.
Exactly.
It is described as a place where sorrow just vanishes. Every lost loved one can be seen again walking the streets. Every regret is erased. And because of the weave, millions of people witness these visions simultaneously. The feedback loop just goes into absolute overdrive. Millions of people literally pack up their lives, abandon their physical homes, and start marching north to the Sea of Mirrors.
And this theoretical planetary danger suddenly becomes deeply personal for Ilian. His sister, Leora, who is the only family he has left, vanishes. She leaves a single message behind on the weave. I saw Mother there, their mother who died 20 years ago.
So Ilian leaves the Hall of Accord to go find her. And the journey is visually stunning. He travels past floating forests with gravitational roots and massive mountain ranges inhabited by biomechanical dragons with wings made of living circuitry. It is this massive, vibrant, physical world, and everyone's just leaving it behind to chase a ghost.
The author uses that vivid imagery specifically to emphasize the scale of the physical reality that humanity is willingly discarding.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. When I was reading about this shining city, this localized mirage that feeds people exactly what they desperately want to see, causing them to abandon their actual physical lives, I couldn't help but think about our phones. It feels like the ultimate metaphor for a perfectly tuned algorithmic feed.
Oh, that is so spot on. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is an incredibly precise analogy. What does an algorithm do? It strips away the friction of reality. It is designed to amplify emotional resonance over factual substance.
Exactly. I mean, I catch myself doing this. I will be scrolling, and I get served a meticulously edited video of someone living in a converted van in the mountains, making pour-over coffee in the mist, looking perfectly at peace. And for about 10 seconds, I am entirely ready to sell my house, quit my job, and change that exact life.
Because it's perfectly curated.
Yes, it is a manufactured longing. It is a collective delusion built from people projecting their deepest, most curated desires, and the system just feeds it right back to us.
And just like the shining city, it feeds on your emotional engagement. In astrological terms, modern social media is often the shadow side of Sun square Neptune. It preys on our collective desire to believe in a beautiful, frictionless illusion because the alternative, putting down the phone and sitting with the pain, boredom, or messiness of a physical reality, is simply too difficult to bear.
So true. So if we're all currently marching toward our own algorithmic shining cities, Alien is walking through the physical manifestation of one. And on his journey, he meets the resistance. He finds farmers, engineers, and healers who are just quietly maintaining the world. Specifically, he meets a woman named Mara.
Mara is the antidote to the illusion. While millions of people are migrating toward a phantom paradise, she is standing on a remote, windswept sea cliff, manually building a lighthouse out of actual stone, completely alone.
Alien is baffled, and he asks her why she stayed when everyone else left. Her answer is just so grounding. She says, someone must keep the light burning if they come home. And then she adds, because reality still needs caretakers.
Reality still needs caretakers. That is the thesis of Venus trine Saturn. It is the acknowledgement that the physical world requires constant, unglamorous maintenance. Mara isn't projecting a holographic lighthouse onto the weave. She is hauling heavy rocks one by one. She's building a foundation.
They end up traveling together to the Sea of Mirrors, and as they travel, a relationship develops. But the author makes a point to show that it doesn't grow from some sweeping cinematic fantasy. It grows from practical conversations, shared physical effort, and recognizing each other's scars. It is the exact opposite of the holographic, frictionless love the young couple projected in Elian's office.
Which is vital, because that grounding prepares Elian for what happens when they finally reach the Sea of Mirrors. The climax of this fable is an absolute masterclass in psychological tension.
It really is. There are thousands of people packed onto the shoreline. They're weeping, praying, staring out at this impossible radiant city in the mist. The gates of the city are open. And looking through those gates, people see exactly who they want to see. Dead children, former lovers. And Elian looks, and his breath catches. Because standing right there, smiling and waiting for him, is his dead mother.
He experiences the full, terrifying force of the Sun square Neptune transit. The absolute temptation to surrender. The text notes, for one terrible moment, he wanted to run toward her, wanted to believe.
But then, Elian does something crucial. He activates an ancient diagnostic lens hidden in his neural implant. He forces himself to look at the city not through the lens of emotion, but through a lens of pure structural analysis, and the illusion fractures.
What's fascinating here is how the diagnostic lens works. It doesn't just put a label on the city that says fake. It reveals the actual mechanics of the weave. It shows Ilian that the shining city isn't a miracle. It's a planetary feedback loop. Millions of unresolved hopes and profound griefs are being projected outward. And the city is just humanity's collective longing given physical form. It is a mirror. And the text notes, mirrors could drown people just as surely as oceans.
The city is literally feeding on their emotional energy to sustain itself. Every time someone surrenders a boundary and gives in to the grief, the illusion gets stronger. Ellen turns around and tries to warn the crowd. He tells them it is a feedback loop. But nobody listens. The vision is too beautiful. So I have to ask, how do you fight a massive, beautiful illusion that millions of people desperately want to believe in? If logic just bounces off this illusion and facts don't work, what is the actual mechanism for breaking a planetary feedback loop of grief?
It is a profound question because, as we see in our own world, facts rarely dismantle a deeply held emotional delusion. Mara provides the answer. She doesn't fight the weave with a bigger, louder illusion. She fights it with grounding. She takes the physical lantern from the lighthouse she was building, and she lights a tiny, real flame in the darkness.
The story describes that little flame as completely insignificant beside the massive radiant city.
It is insignificant visually, sure, but psychologically it is a circuit breaker. Mara starts talking to the people nearest her. But she doesn't preach about the illusion, she just talks about mundane reality. She talks about repairing roofs, growing crops, keeping promises, burying loved ones. She anchors them back to the physical world.
Wait, why does talking about fixing a roof break a trauma loop?
Because of how we process reality. Trauma, grief, and projection live in the unregulated emotional centers of the brain. When you focus on mundane physical reality like the steps to build a roof, the texture of stone, the heat of a lantern, you engage the prefrontal cortex, you ground the nervous system. You pull people out of the endless ocean of Neptune and put their feet back on the solid ground of Saturn.
Wow. And it creates a ripple effect. Other people on the shore start telling stories of ordinary courage. They talk about the kind of love that survives after the initial inspiration fades. More people light actual physical lanterns. And as they do this, the collective energy shifts. They start feeding the illusion with their unregulated longing, and they start grounding themselves in the present moment. And the shining city trembles. It weakens. And at dawn, it just vanishes into mist. Reality, messy, painful reality defeats the fantasy.
It demonstrates that the antidote to delusion isn't simply shouting the truth. It is actively participating in the maintenance of reality. It's choosing the friction of the present over the ghost of the past.
So what does this all mean? The story gives us an epilogue years later after an event historians call the Great Unveiling. Elian and Mara have rebuilt the Hall of Accord. But the weave itself has fundamentally changed. It is no longer a sky full of escapist, frictionless dreams. From orbit, travelers look down and see a bridge of golden light stretching across the world, a monument created from billions of actual fulfilled promises.
The author summarizes the entire lesson of these astrological transits perfectly at the end. Compassion without boundaries becomes sacrifice. Dreams without structure become delusion. Hope without reality becomes escape. But love joined with commitment becomes a bridge.
It all comes back to that central structural question, does this have substance? Which brings us right back to you listening to this today. We talked earlier about the algorithmic echo chambers of our own modern world. If the internet is our version of the weave, amplifying our collective longings, our outrage, and our griefs every single time we open our phones.
It forces us to examine our own role in that ecosystem. Are we constantly surrendering our boundaries to the feedback loop?
Exactly. I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about your day. Think about that napkin sketch of a perfect house versus the gritty, muddy reality of actually pouring the foundation. When you log on today, when you connect with the world, are you currently using your precious energy to chase the mirage of a shining city? Or are you using it to lay the stones for a bridge of promises?